Hi everyone, so for this project we're going to be creating the Calligraphy Initials from Deep Space Sparkle, and our background is going to be watercolor and Sharpie, and then our foreground is going to be a bubble letter of our first initial that's done with paper and then added onto our background. So before we actually start painting and doing our bubble letters, we want to practice a wispy version of the first letter of our first name, and we're going to do that on dry erase to start. So what we're going to do, just using our dry erase boards, is we're going to take the first letter of our first name and we're going to draw it in different versions until we get one that we like. Now when you make your letters, you can go fancy, you can go basic, you can pretty much make your A however you'd like. I'd like you to think of making that first letter fancy. Now if that means curving some lines in different ways, you can. Now you could add different detailed designs to your letter if you'd like, but what I want you to kind of figure out is how you want that letter to look, because you will be repeating that letter over and over again in your background. So once you've kind of tested a little bit and figured out which one that you like, you're gonna pick it and circle it. So I think I'm liking this one right here. Now for our background, we're going to be using repetition and balance to repeat that letter over and over again throughout the entire background. So to start, make sure you put your real name on the back and then flip your paper over. So what we're going to do is we're going to repeat the letter that you picked using pencil to cover your entire page. And I'm using the word balance because we want to make sure that there is that letter spaced evenly throughout the entire page. So I'm going to just take my pencil, working lightly, I'm going to start repeating that A. Now what you will see is I'm going to change the shape. I'm going to change the size a little bit on some of my A's, and I'm going to overlap with some of my A's. So I'm turning some of them, making sure I do the same letter every single time that I originally practiced here. And just as I'm finishing up, filling up my space, I'm making some of my A's go right off the page. So imagine that the rest of your letter was there, and you're just gonna draw and fill up the whole entire page. Like I said before, we're using balance, so all of these A's are not just located in one area crowding each other. They're all balanced throughout the page. I have big ones, I have little ones. Next, we're gonna outline everything in Sharpie. Perfect, so my Sharpie part is all complete. Just to bump up the details, I'm gonna pick a few lines and make them thicker just to add an added bit of value. So to do that, just pick a few lines and make them thicker. Perfect, so all my thick lines are in. Next, we're gonna start adding color with watercolor. So for our watercolor, we are going to pick 1 or 2 colors. You want colors that work nicely together. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna create the value, so the darks and lights of each color throughout your entire page while still using balance. Now in each section, I want you to add a different color. And what I mean by that is if I do purple here, in between these 2 A's, I want to pick my other color for next to it. So my blue will go next to it. And what will happen naturally is your colors will start to blend and bleed together. Don't forget to do the darks and lights of both of those colors. An easy trick for painting faster is if you do all of your one color first. So I'm going to do all of my purples first, darks and lights, and then I'll go in and start with my blues. Perfect. As I get close to the end, I really want to make sure that my white spots are all covered. An easy trick with getting a light value too is if you just take the water and don't add any paint to it, you can use it to blend the colors on your paper and to help smooth that out. I'm also going to make sure that I didn't lose any of my dark spots. So for example, this one I wanted really dark. I'm gonna let it dry for a second, and then really go in and get it as dark as I can possibly get it with that color. So before it goes to the drying rack, make sure you're happy with it and really like it with all of those white spots, lights, and darks. Perfect, I have it to a good spot. I'm very carefully going to pick it up and put it in the drying rack. Perfect, so now that my background is dry, we need to start making our big giant initial to go on top of it. Now before we actually make it with construction paper, I want us to practice our bubble and our block letters using dry erase before we go over to the final permanent initial that's going on to your final. So in your drawing guide, you'll see bubble letters and block letters. The difference with block letters is they have like a squared off edge, where bubble letters have a rounded edge. So using your dry erase, you're going to use that first initial from your original painting of your first name to practice these to start. So first with bubble letters, what you're going to do is you're going to do an uppercase letter, make it nice and tall, and then you're literally going to put it into a bubble wherever it needs one, and then using your eraser or your finger, you're gonna just go in and erase your original first lines. And what that does is it creates the shape, but also gives it that bubble-like texture. If you're comfortable freehanding bubble letters, like you've had a lot of practice with them, you could also freehand them. The other version that you could do is a block letter. Now with our block letters, it starts with the same uppercase letter. And instead of rounding your corners, like this one right here is a round curve, you're gonna square them off. So using mostly straight lines. So straight lines, straight, and then straight in the center, and then go in and erase your original first letter. And then that will give you the difference between the bubble and the block. This one has that square, this one has the round. Now what you could also do is you can add shadows to your letter. Now when you add shadows to your letters, you want to think of a light source. So for example, the lights in this room or even the sun. So if the sun is over here, that means the shadows are going to be on the left side of this block letter because this is getting all the sun, and then the shadows will be over here. So you can add those in however you'd like, and you want to think about where that sun wouldn't be touching. If you get stuck on where those shadows would be, just ask a friend or you can ask me, I'll let you know where they go. If your light source changes, so for example, if the sun gets moved over here, the sun will be shining on this side, which means your shadows will move over to the right side. Now you can get fancy with your shadows too. If you want to do a dot shadow, a stripe shadow, or any type of fancy line shadow, you can even do patterns. It's completely up to you how you want to create that shadow. Now, once you get a design that you like, I think I like the block letter more than I like the bubble letter, you're gonna start copying that design over to your final paper. And we're gonna be working on construction paper. Perfect, so I'm gonna pick out my construction paper color. Now you're gonna have lots of options. And what I want you to do is pick a color that looks really nice with the background that you already did. Now you can do complementary colors, which are across from each other on the color wheel. So if I were to do this blue and purple one, I could do the opposite and go yellow if I wanted to, or you can stick with the same color grouping. So I have cool colors right now. I could stick with cool colors. I could go purple, or I could go even green if I wanted to. So thinking about the colors that work best, I think I'm gonna stick with purple just because I like how that looks together. Keep in mind you can switch, you can pick any color that you want. To start, you're gonna copy what you did on your dry erase over to your construction paper. Now keep in mind, we are going to be cutting these out. So the paper right now is about the size of your normal paper, so you have to fill up this whole sheet. If you work too small, do a tiny 8, it's gonna be too small when you put it on top over here. If you go too big, too much of your painting is gonna be covered up. So think about medium right in the middle. What I want you to do is just start sketching in your initial, same exact way that you did on your dry erase. Don't forget to add in where your shadows are going to go. Then using Sharpie, you're gonna trace your lines. Now, once you have your lines drawn in, you can get creative on how you want your initial to actually look using your Sharpies. So if you want to do Zentangle design, if you want to do dots, if you want to do patterns, it's completely up to you. But think about how you want your shadow to look. Do you want it dark or light or pattern? Do you want the inside of your letter to look? Because remember, that's going on top of your actual painting. So I'm gonna let this part fast forward while I add in all of my details. Once my design is complete with the Sharpie, you're going to cut it out. Once it's cut out, then you want to find a good position for it in your final composition. I think it looks best when it's right in the middle, but you can kind of plan out where things are based on what's in your actual background. So I think it looks really nice right there. Then I'm just gonna glue it right to the center. When you add your glue, put your glue on the back side of your construction paper, not on the final, just so you have the right amount. Trick 2 is you can flip it over and press from the back to make sure it's all nice and flat with your glue. Now's the chance to add any extra details you may want onto your paper. So if you want to add more lines using Sharpie or more details using Sharpie, you can. And then next we are going to upload to Art Sonia.